We're happy to have on the Illini Inquirer podcast a friend of the show, and that's Trent Meacham, former Illini, part of Big Ten Network. And Trent, I got to say, man, you're a natural. I thought you did a great job this year. What was that experience like?
I was not a natural 3 years ago when I started on the Jeremy Werner show. So, I got some experience with you, and it was just, it's fun to stay involved with the game. It was kind of a different for me being on TV, being in the studio, doing some games, but great people to work with. The Big Ten Conference, it's fun to cover. I enjoyed kind of being able to cover every team somewhat objectively. I really kind of enjoyed that, the different coaches, different athletes. So it was a great experience. I learned a lot, had a lot of fun, and, plan on doing it again next year. So I'm looking forward to it.
I think the regular season of the Big Ten, the postseason of the Big Ten tournament, it's so much fun. Like the Big Ten has been so deep here, Trent, but like it doesn't parlay into NCAA tournament success here recently. Like, do you have a reason for that? Do you have any ideas or any theories of why it's not translated? Because man, there's so many wars during the regular season, so many teams that look great during the regular season, just hasn't led to tournament success.
Yeah, great question. I think the most obvious one to me is lack of elite talent. There just hasn't been that in the Big Ten. I mean, you look at Illinois, look at our school. I mean, you have one NBA player really in Ayo Dosunmu over the past decade or so. Malcolm Hill's had a cup of tea. Obviously Myers Leonard has some time there, Brandon Paul, but really one guy that I think is going to stay and have a long career. Right now, I think that's changing with the talent in Illinois, but across the board, if you take away Michigan State's had some guys, Michigan's had some guys, the talent just hasn't been there. And I think there's been some misfortune. There's been some teams that I think had the ability to make runs. Illinois 2 years ago, I think for sure. I thought Iowa this year had the make of a team that could make a run. And sometimes it's just you have a bad day. You catch the right team at the wrong time and you could be out quick. That's the beauty and the what's so tough about the NCAA tournament. I also think that some of the Big Ten teams haven't been able to adjust as well. And I think you have to be able to play in different styles and win different ways. When you think about those teams, those guys that can guard multiple positions, that are versatile players. I know Illinois, we have not had that.
Right.
And we've guarded pick and rolls one way and one way only the last 3 years with Kofi. I think you have to be able to adjust, adapt. Illinois hasn't done that. I don't think other schools, I don't think Purdue did that great this year with all their talent. And to me, lack of elite talent and a lack of kind of the ability to adjust and be versatile. The Big Ten hasn't quite been there like other leagues, but there's also just been some misfortune.
Yeah, Trent, I'm wondering, do you think that's a versatility talent problem or is that a coaching adjustment issue? Because you are recruiting to beat the Big Ten teams, right? And if you're playing Zach Edey and Hunter Dickinson, you kind of want a big guy there that can kind of battle with him, or a Kofi Coburn, right? But then it also kind of limits you in that versatility. So Underwood seems like he's going to change that, and he's he's going his way to change that now. So I'm wondering if it's like, hey, do you have to recruit towards the NCAA tournament and not the regular season? But I think regular season titles and conference champions, those things matter too.
Yes, the regular season conference, that matters a lot. I don't buy this argument that I've heard for years, maybe decades, that the Big Ten is this battering league. You got to be big. You got to be bruising. Other leagues are too. The Big 12's very physical as well. Maybe not the SEC or Pac-12 quite as much, but look at Iowa's team this year. Yeah. Very finesse oriented. Nobody that was real strong. You take out maybe their point, Joe Toussaint, who was kind of a bully of a point guard. They didn't have that physical presence inside at all. And they the last 2 months, I mean, the run that they went on, then through the Big Ten tournament, they showed you can win without that. Look at Illinois' best team since, in the last 40 years or whatever it's been, 2004, 2005. They were not a big physical team. I look at college basketball, and I said lack of elite talent for Big Ten, but I'd say also guard play. So those versatile players, but at the guard play, this is a guards game. The Big Ten has been loaded with good big men. If you can get those guys, great. They're going to have some value, especially in college basketball. When I think of guard play, Villanova's been at the forefront. They were doing this even before their most recent one. They had a 4-guard lineup back in early 2000s with guys like Alan Ray, Randy Foye, Kyle Lowry. they kind of set the precedent. I thought Illinois in 2004, 2005, really, with that 3-guard lineup was terrific. But I think that's a real key for success. Big Ten, NCAA tournament, whatever conference you're in, I think that's the way that basketball is: skill, making shots, speed. And if you got bigs that you can throw in there that can do some things awesome. I mean, Kofi was a generational player at Illinois, but that's the way that basketball has gone. College basketball has always been a little bit behind. I'd say more than a little bit. I would say a good few steps behind the NBA, behind international basketball. I think that's starting to become more apparent, the need for skill. Play multiple small guards at once. Who cares? If they can play, if they can make plays for themselves and others, I think that's how you win games.
I want to circle back to this. So those listening, I'll get back to this and how it pertains to Illinois, but I want to get your thoughts here, Trent, big picture, because there is no such thing as an offseason anymore with the transfer portal, NIL, one-time transfer. It's all coming together at the same time and it's disrupting college basketball. I think that's fair to say. Whether it's a good thing, bad thing, there are probably both sides of this, but you are a transfer. So I'm interested to get your thoughts on this kind of new age of player movement, player empowerment, and just this crazy offseason of roster overhauls for everybody, basically.
Yeah, maybe I was a transfer, so maybe I can't talk with quite the I got a bias there, maybe. We always want to say something's 100% good, 100% bad. And that's whether it's basketball, politics, whatever. Like, there's a lot of nuance to everything. And I'm for the ability for players to be able to move and go where they want. And you're talking about young people. You're talking about what's the goal of college, and to get an education, to grow, to be able to be a positive contributor to a society. And but it doesn't seem like what's going on now is best for the game, best for players. I don't know the right answer. This is a year-round thing. I mean, it's crazy, but I think those who embrace it, those who take it for what it is and make the most of it, and there's some good in it from the standpoint of, Jeremy, coaches got to be more accountable now. Coaches for a long, long time, they could say whatever they want, they could do whatever they want, and they could push certain players out of the program when they wanted to. And that's kind of that's been the nature of the beast. Now players have a lot more leverage. And I think for the most part, that's good. But I would hope that we're able to get up to a point where there's maybe a little bit more balance, because I think players don't have there's really nothing holding them back, and they can kind of on a whim just leave, and there's no repercussions. And so I don't know if there's a solution. I don't know if and I don't want to go off on different things here, Jeremy, but if it's employer-employee relationships, if it's different types of contracts that can maybe have a balance of power. Look, I don't think college athletics is going anywhere. I don't think that's going to change the game. In fact, there's more to talk about right now, right? We're in late May or early May, and we're talking about, there's a lot of exciting things going on. But I would like to see a more balance of power between the coaches and institutions and the athlete students.
Yeah, I'm with you, Trent. I don't think anybody can really argue with players being able to move freely, because coaches can move freely, right? I think they should have the freedom to make mistakes.
And
right?
in most sports, they could already do that, right? There's only a handful of sports where they couldn't transfer up until recently.
Correct. Yeah. So it was like the basketball is football, and I think baseball were the only ones you had to sit out. And it's clear because it's money. And the coaches are struggling with a lack of power because, as you said, they've always had the upper hand, so much so. But now is it balanced, out of balance because the players have so much? I don't know. I don't know what the right answers are, but I do think it's a problem when 40% of guys are entering the transfer portal and not finding a home. Like I think the education of the players need to get caught up to that, and maybe it balances each other out. Maybe it doesn't, but I don't have the answers for it either. But I do think at some point, does it swing back? But I'm with you, Trent. I don't have the answers for what those things are. I thought Josh Whitman's idea of, hey, when you sign with a school, you got to be there for 2 years. You can still transfer, but if you're there for 2 years, you can transfer freely. I think that would have been a great idea originally, but I don't think the genie's going back in the bottle. I don't think it's going to go back that way. I think it's going to be really hard to do that.
Yeah, I like that approach. I transferred after my freshman year. I had to sit out a year, though. I do like that. I think probably in 80% of the situations, most kids would be better off staying put, sticking with what you where you're at, fighting through whatever adversity. I think most kids would be better with that. But look, there's a lot of times where they're better off transferring and getting to a new place, new scenery. Look, you're making a decision as a young person, and then to be, to not be allowed to change your mind when many other students do this too. Many other non-athlete students, they transfer all the time. We have no problem with that. If that was my son, my daughter, and for some reason, I think from the outside, all we just think about is basketball, but there's so many more things that go into it. And you want to give them the opportunity to transfer, to go to a new place if that's what's best for them. But I think sadly, there's a lot of other voices. There's a lot of other characters in some of these young people's ears, and maybe over-promising things that aren't going to happen. And that's just where you hope that these young people have the education, the knowledge, the right influence as they make these decisions. And, again, I'll get back to it though, Jeremy. I think coaches now, for so long, is always about me and my program. And I think the coaches that, hey, I want to help you achieve your goals. What's important to you? And that's like any leader in any business, anything. The coaches, the leaders that do that the best, their product, their company, their team, I think will benefit from that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the coaches are held accountable. I think you said that very, very well, Trent. All right. So from Illinois' perspective, Curbelo, Bosmans Verdonk, Omar Payne, Pajemski, all gone. But they do get back Coleman Hawkins, RJ Melendez, Luke Goody, Brandon Lieb, and a guy we haven't seen yet, Dane Danger. What do you think of that core group of five? And what are your kind of expectations, especially for the guys, Hawkins, Melendez, Goody, that we expect to play a huge role that are returning?
I'm laughing. That's not a core group, Jeremy.
It's not as good of a core group as a lot of Big Ten teams.
I'm so excited about this next season because this group is going to look so different. I've been high on Coleman Hawkins for a long time. Does he put it together? I don't know, but I think he's got NBA potential. Doesn't mean he's going to be an all Big Ten player. Doesn't mean he's going to play at the next level, but he has the tools to get there. And I think to do some really exciting things.
How does he get there? You said NBA. I agree with you. He always reminds me of DJ Wilson, just kind of the skill set, but how does he get there now?
Well, I think consistency is the biggest thing for him. Consistency and keeping it simple. He's got the ability to, I think, do more, but he's not quite there yet. He doesn't quite have the level of skill to pull it off quite yet. And when he keeps things simple, when it's one shot fake, 1-2 dribbles, to the rim, but when he veers from that, at least the past couple of years, typically he hasn't gone well. And sometimes he'll convert on a tough play, and it's like, wow, look what he can do, but he's not able to do that consistently. And that's, I think, for most young players, consistency is the biggest thing. And everybody loves potential, but coaches, they're going to want to see consistency. Can you consistently, knock down shots? Can you consistently be in the right place at the right time on defense? And he plays with great energy. He's got the skill. I think he's got the just beyond the skill. I think the awareness and the intellect to take some big strides. So I'm excited about Coleman Hawkins. But it's plain simple for him. You mentioned these other guys. I think RJ Melendez is another one that could take a big leap. I mean, he showed some flashes with his athleticism, his ability to spread the floor, and then his I think he's got an awareness to him, the instincts to him that he's going to be a really valuable piece, two-way player. Luke Goody knocks down shots. I'm really intrigued with Dane Danger. I haven't been able to really see him play. I know I've heard some good things about him, but look, we've had this team that's been anchored by Kofi that's been really good. I mean, really good. And Kofi was so dominant. And this team is going to look so different. And I think Dane Danger is this guy that can be a creator from this 5 spot, that can put the ball on the floor, that can make passes. That's not going to be quite that bully that Kofi was, but a completely different player that, I tell you what, it could be a very exciting and kind of a new age type of basketball. But it's, I haven't been able to see them work out like I like to. And then it's a whole nother thing when it's the lights are on, there's only 5 guys on the court. Who are these inexperienced guards and how do they run the show and set the table? But I think it's going to be a lot of fun kind of learning more about this team.
I don't think there's ever been a larger security blanket in Illinois basketball history than Kofi Coburn. Like, you trot him out there, you're going to win 20 games.
Yes, and he's so he has allowed this group the past couple of years to not be their lack of athleticism, their lack of size hasn't been quite as exposed like it would have been
Yeah.
because of how physically dominant he was. If you look at our teams, small, had some quickness, but not very big, not very physical after Kofi Coburn. And now, I mentioned the skill with Dane Danger, Coleman Hawkins. This is a team, you throw in Terrence Shannon, you throw in Ty Rodgers, where you're going to have some big, physical, athletic wings, versatile players, what we have not had. So it's going to be really interesting. Without the big fella, I think we have other pieces that are going to be able to bring some, rebounding, physicality, defense. That's it'll be a different look in so many ways than what we're used to.
Yeah, because like Kofi, if he would have come back, like, hey, you're better off for him coming back. But there's also an excitement, Trent, of something new, something different. And there's a bunch of talent, right? Like, no matter what you think of the rankings, you can watch these guys, whether it's Ty Rodgers or Terrence Shannon, and like there's a length athleticism that we haven't seen before. So I think this is going to be a journey. It's going to have some ups and downs, but I also think this could be one of the more entertaining teams, like style of play we've seen. How do you expect Brad to kind of play, and not knowing all the pieces yet? I mean, they're probably going to add another front court, but with Terrence Shannon here, with Ty Rodgers, with I want to ask you about freshman guards coming up, but some freshman guards, like, how do you expect them to play?
That's a great question, and I really don't know beyond. I would expect even more. We've done a lot of 4 out 1 in with Kofi, and he's sprinting out for ball screens, rim runs. I would expect a lot more to be run through the bigs, because we have. I'm high on these guards, or at least I expect a lot of these guards, but I think Terrence Shannon's going to have the ball in his hands. I think Dane Danger, and if Coleman Hawkins, I talked about keeping it simple, but I think those two guys have the potential for offense to be run through them. And if you watch the NBA, look, the center position, they have the ball in their hands and have to make plays on ball reversals, on ball screens, short rolls, and I think Dane Danger is going to have the ball in his hands a lot. So offensively, it's going to be less, obviously, 4 round 1, and I think more 5 out spacing and multiple guys with the ball in their hands that can create. I even think some of these guards might be better creators than what we've had. And I don't, maybe throwing out Io, but Trent Frazier was so tough, could make shots. But in terms of creating for other players, I think with Jaden Epps and Sky Clark, it's going to be fun. Now, they're inexperienced. Right. So there's a lot of question marks there. But offensively, it should be a fun group to watch. And defensively is maybe where I'm most intrigued, because the talent is clear offensively, but defensively, they're going to be able to switch a lot more. I think we're not just going to see a drop coverage, 98% of the time. I think we'll use that some of the time. But I would expect, for whether it's Coleman Hawkins, Dane Danger, we get another experienced big to be out on the floor, switching. You have these wings that are versatile. So I think we're going to be able to do some different things defensively. And that's probably what I'm most intrigued with watching.
I mean, what's the impact of that, Trent? Like, is it just being versatile? Like, one game you can have this game plan, one game you can have a different game plan, or what is the impact of having switchability, versatility?
It makes individuals beat you. If you can run your offense, if you can set screens to create an advantage, if you switch it, there's no advantage. Now, obviously, teams will ghost ball screens, they'll slip screens, they'll screen their own man. Teams will do different things to create an advantage. But if you're switching, now all of a sudden, okay, Terrence Shannon's guarding me. Okay, now it's Coleman Hawkins. Everybody can move their feet, can defend. You're not coming off a screen and forcing 2 players to guard that person. Now you're able to stay home. Now you're relying on someone to break you down one-on-one, make shots over you. And at the college level, there's not many guys that do that consistently that are going to beat you. And when I look at teams that advance in the tournament, or you look at, I loved how Villanova has played over the years, a lot of guys that are versatile, that can switch. And again, you just don't give up those advantages and force one-on-one actions.
Yeah, I saw it with Houston as well.
Yes, Houston was terrific at that.
Yeah, 2 top 50 guards coming in. Sincere Harris, another 4-star kid. but no lead guards with college experience. We'll see if they had a transfer, but Brad seems to be going with these young guns. And hey, when you got Jaden Epps and Sky Clark, you might want to do that. But you were with a talented freshman guard, Dimitri McCamey. I mean, early on, struggled a little bit, but towards the end of the season was one of your better players. What's it like for a freshman guard? Like, what should the expectation be, even if they are really, really talented?
Couple of things before I get to that. One, you mentioned Dimitri, and he was a different player in early March than he was in November. I mean, completely different player. They're going to go through a lot of growth over the course of the year. But also thinking if Illinois were to bring in, say, a transfer, a guy that's produced at with great numbers at a mid-major level or at the high major level, when you talk about recruiting, and are you recruiting over a 5-star kid? And there's a lot of different dynamics that Coach Underwood and staff. Do you take a kid if he can really help you? But what does that do to some of the other dynamics in the locker room? There's just a lot of stuff that coaches now have to consider that, really wasn't on the table so much in years past. But for these freshman guards, look, I think there's few guys that come in and it's like night in, night out. They're going to be rock solid. They're going to be able to produce at a high level. You just rarely see that. I look at, Michigan had, I think, Frankie Collins and Kobe Buffkin last year might have been somewhat similar in rankings. Mm-hmm. I was really high on Frankie Collins. I thought he should have played more, came on pretty well at the end. I mean, I know he's gone, but I think he's ready to take a big leap in his sophomore year. Again, every player is different, but I just look at, there's very few freshman guards that come in. It's like, wow, this guy's a stud. This guy's one of the best players in the league. Doesn't mean it can't happen. And I think here's the beauty of Sky Clark, Jaden Epps, those two in particular, when I just look at their skill level, I think they're going to have the opportunity. And for a young player, the most important thing isn't, yes, practice, but it's actually being there under the lights, in game action, having those live reps and not having that short leash where you make a turnover, you miss a few shots, all of a sudden you're out. Having a leash to go out there and make mistakes and have to create and have to make plays and have to stay in the game when you're struggling, when your team's struggling. Sky Clark, Jaden Epps, I think they will have those opportunities. And I would expect a little bit of a bumpy ride, but I think there's the skill there and enough other pieces to take some of that load off their shoulder in terms of having to create and make plays for the team that I'm optimistic about them having very good freshman years. I just would not expect maybe a smooth freshman year.
Yeah, I'm just bringing this guy up as an example. I'm not saying they're going to be a first-round pick, but Malachi Branham's first 10 games, 6 points a game, shot 38%, struggled against Xavier, Florida, Duke. But by the end of the year, pretty dang good. Frankie Collins is a guy I think is a big loss for them because I think he could be really good, but they brought in a transfer and he didn't get to kind of go through those things. So that's a good comp there. Terrence Shannon is obviously a big addition. And it seems like they're trying to add another one here. One guy we're pretty familiar with, you are too, Trent, with Pete Nance at Northwestern, entering the draft, also in the transfer portal. And Matthew Meyer, same thing, enters the draft, but also enters the transfer portal. Either of those guys would seem to make a big impact. But not only the prep thing, they're adding talent here in the transfer portal, Trent.
Well, you got to, right? You got to add talent. I tell you what, those two guys are oozing with talent. Matthew Meyer, I think, is first-round talent. Does he get there? I don't know. I missed him, but I was up in Chicago with Priority Sports Agency. Pete Nance was working out there. I was there last week, and the Murray, Keegan and Chris Murray were up there and just watching those guys work out. I did talk to Pete Nance, and I don't know. He doesn't know me, but we were chatting, and I was just asking about Illinois, and he said, "Man, I haven't heard from one coach. I haven't talked to one coach at Illinois." So I hear a lot of these rumors, and look, he could have just told me that. He could have, because he doesn't want to give anything away, but he was just like, "Come on, I haven't heard from one coach at this point." Yeah. So I don't know. I know he wants to be in the NBA next year, and I think he's potentially an NBA player. I think he could have a long NBA career, but does he get there this year? I don't know. Would he look good at Illinois? I think so. I think him and Coleman Hawkins have a lot of similarities, but also if you're, I think Coleman Hawkins might have a higher ceiling. I think he's a little bit of a better athlete. I think he plays with a little bit more of an edge to him. He's not as skilled as Pete Nance is quite yet, or mature in his game. And so if I'm Pete Nance, do you come to Illinois and Dane Dange is kind of this X factor that I look like I think he could be a great player.
Yeah.
And if I'm Pete Nance, I'm probably going, if I'm staying in college, I'm going to somewhere where I'm going to play 25, 30 minutes a night. I don't know if that's available at Illinois. So that's my inside scoop that might not be inside at all, because again, Pete could have just been telling me BS because he doesn't want to give away anything away.
Right.
But I'm just telling you, he told me he hadn't talked to one coach. That was a week ago. So
tampering doesn't happen at all in college basketball these days. You don't think 25 minutes for Pete Nance? I think Dane Danger goes 15, 10, 15. Like that'd be a good thing. I think.
I think
right?
so. I think he would get 25 minutes. But here's if I'm a young player and I want to play in the NBA, I'm looking at opportunity to ball. I'm not looking at it more so than, is this team going to do this or do that? I think the best thing for young people's development is where they actually going to have the opportunity to get reps, to get minutes, to play. And yes, I think he would get that at Illinois, but Dane Dange is such an X factor to me. I don't know if he's a 25-minute type of guy that's going to, do all sorts of things. And Coleman Hawkins is a very comparable player to Pete Nance, who's not quite as good as him yet, but I do think has a little bit of a higher upside because of his edge that he plays with, his motor that he plays with. So who knows, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Who knows? But hey, that would be a luxury. That would be a great luxury to have that experience and have that skill come in. And you talk about length and the ability to spread the floor. I mean, it'd be terrific.
Predicting the Big Ten is so difficult right now. Like I thought Michigan could be this powerhouse coming back, right? With Dickinson, but then Houston and Diabate both could stick in the draft here. Iowa, I'm high on, even with Keegan Murray going, because I think Chris Murray could be great, but he could go to the draft, right, Chris, because he's so intriguing. Maybe I'll do this with you. Should they come back or not? Chris Murray, do you think he should come back or not?
I think he'll get drafted if he goes. I think if he comes back, he's. I don't think he duplicates Keegan's season from last year, but I think he's an all Big Ten player, first or second team. You look at his numbers. I mean, I thought he should have played more last year. He only played like 18 minutes a night.
Right.
I mean, he should have played 25 minutes. But that's a tough call because I think he gets drafted, but he also has the opportunity if he comes back to really take a step up these draft boards. And here's too, we talk about NIL. Maybe that is appealing to some of these players that are fringe players. Hey, I can come back and start earning some money. For some guys, and I don't think Chris is in that category, but Oscar Tshiebwe, some of these guys are probably their most lucrative years in basketball might be in college. So some of this might be keeping some of these players, some of this talent in school, which is a great thing.
How about Houston and Diabate? What do you think of their decisions?
I'm a big fan of Moussa Diabate. I was from the very beginning of the season. I love his swagger, his energy that he plays with. I think he's first team all Big Ten good if he comes back. Caleb Houston's got to show me more. I think he has the potential, but he's got to show me a bit more. I don't know where he's at on the draft boards. I know he was lottery pick at one point, but I think he would benefit from coming back.
Max Christie's an interesting one because some guys still have him late first, but he's a guy that I feel like if he came back could be one of the best players in the Big Ten. Like if he came back, I would have Michigan State, one of my top 3 or 4 teams. And I think he could be top 15 potentially, maybe lottery next year. What do you think about his decision?
Well, I think, and I look at Max Christie and some of these other guys we talked about, the opportunity to be the man is huge. And I look at it when you see some of these high school players reclassifying, going to college early, and you might say, oh, they're going to play against better competition. They'll get better coaching. I think for a young person's development, if you're the guy and you're taking 15 shots a night and you got everything on your shoulders and you have to play with the swagger and you develop confidence, I think for most players, that's really good for their development. And I would look at Max Christie as being that person who was kind of a role player, has talent, has the length, but he hasn't shown me enough yet. And I think coming back another year, if he takes it up another level, because he is that guy that they're looking to, could have a great year. Now, I do think, I'll say Michigan State. I think their point guard play, I think is a real strength. That's been kind of talked negatively about. And I think those two guys, Tyson Walker, AJ Hogard, they're both back, I believe. I thought at the end of the year last year, those were their go-to guys. And I think they're going to be really good because of that tandem. And I would love to see them play together more.
Yeah, no, I think they could be really, really good, especially if Christie comes back. All right, last one. I think Trace Jackson Davis. He's a guy that, like, I watched Arkansas and Jalen Williams, and I go, if Trace Jackson Davis were in that role, I think people would love him, but people are expecting him to be the man all the time. I just don't think he's always had the best talent around him, but he's got an interesting decision too.
Yes, he does. In some ways, I've been almost disappointed in his lack of development from a skill perspective. When you look at him contrasted with like an EJ Liddell, but TJD, he's from an athlete standpoint. I mean, might have been the best athlete in the Big Ten. I mean, how quick he is off the floor. And I think if he can develop his skill, not even out, he's got to be able to shoot 15 feet. Doesn't have to shoot threes, but if he can shoot from 15 feet, put the ball on the floor a little bit. I mean, he could be a menace, college basketball or the NBA, because of his, maybe a little bit of a improved Brian Randall. B. Randall's my guy, but kind of that similar type of player and athlete, but a little bit stronger than B. Randall was. And that's saying a lot. I think TJD has the ability to be an NBA player. I've seen him higher than I expected on some things. I didn't know if he was an NBA player because of his lack of skill, but I think he's such an intriguing athlete, so good on the defensive end. And if he can improve in a few areas, and it would just help if he could have some shooters around him. I mean, they haven't been able to shoot the ball. And if he had that, I think if he could step out and go up the bounce a little bit, he's going to be a beast, next year in college basketball if he's back.
Did you have Brian Randall as potential future NBA head coach material when you were playing with him? Like, I don't know if I saw that in his future.
Oh, there's a few things there. One, I would say first and foremost, Brian's, when you think of the character of someone, I mean, he's just such a high character, honorable man. I mean, someone that I have a ton of respect for. And so that's the most important thing. And I think sometimes too, we look at the college coaches and they're just ranting and raving and screaming. And most good NBA coaches aren't that way. You don't do that with pros. You don't do that with grown men. You don't do that over 100 games in a year. And I think his ability to work under Monty Williams, who there's some similarities there. I think there's not a better place for Brian. So I did not see him as an NBA coach. I really didn't, but he was a good player, had a very good career overseas, has been through a lot with injuries and that. And so I'm thrilled for him. And he's just in a terrific situation with Phoenix.
Yeah. He always had this, when I was covering you guys, he always had this like kind of professor like quality to him. He was always he's kind of Jacob Grandison like, in that they were careful with what they said, but they said a lot when they said something, and it always carried weight that way. But Trent Meacham, man, appreciate the time as always. It's a crazy off season. It is fun. Like, this does make for some entertainment in the off season, but great insight as always, and keep up the great work with BTN, man.
Thanks, Jeremy. You too.